past year, whether it is in the form of rationalization or it is in the form of creating transparency and predictability. Recently, there has also been the differentiated responsibility placed on polluting industries. So those that are more polluting need to have a higher green cover. Those that don't, they're not, as they do not have that same mandate to do. Similarly, there has been a classification of polluting industries on the basis of red, blue, white, depending upon the level of emissions that they have. So work is ongoing, and that is reflected in the relevant chapter 10 on environment.
And also, just to add to what my colleague Chandini said, we have looked at the pollution issue in the chapter on urbanization as well. So you will see more details there. Thank you.
9.
सर मैं राजीव हूँ दैनिक जागरण अखबार से। सर मेरा सवाल है कि ये जो ग्रोथ रेट आप करंट फाइनेंशियल ईयर के लिए 7% है और नेक्स्ट के लिए 6.8 to 7.2% आपने प्रोजेक्ट किया है, तो मतलब क्या है कि इस रेट से हम लोग 2047 तक विकसित भारत बन जाएंगे? क्योंकि पहले जो अनुमान लगाया जा रहा था वो मोर देन 8% का हमेशा अनुमान लगाया गया है। तो एक तो सवाल ये है मेरा। दूसरा सर कि आपने स्टेट जो है, स्टेट के लिए कहा है कि पॉलिसी उनको ही बनानी होगी और वो केंद्र के साथ मिलकर जो है पॉलिसी बनाए, लेकिन स्टेट जो फ्रीवीज को लेकर इतना कुछ हो रहा है और हम तो उसको लेकर उनके पास पैसा ही नहीं बच रहा है, तो कहाँ से वो विकास कर पाएंगे? तो इस दोनों सवाल पे क्या कहना है?
So the second question is something that we covered not only in the presentation, but it's also discussed in some detail in the chapter on fiscal affairs, which is chapter 3 if I'm not mistaken. Chapter 2. So you will see a discussion on it on the unconditional transfers. So far, the high nominal GDP growth, GSDP growth in states has provided enough cover for these transfers to happen, which is why the overall fiscal deficit of states is still 2.8% if you do not include the SASCI loans. So it has not had an impact on the fiscal deficit, but naturally some of it has come at the expense of capital expenditure on the part of states. But that is why we have flagged this issue. So I mentioned this in the presentation as well. Now, as far as the growth rate that is needed, that mention of 8% is in dollar terms. So if you are able to grow at sustainably at 7% on average, there could be a given year in which it is higher or another year could be lower, etc. In real terms, in Indian rupee, then if you were to add the inflation rate that will be experienced in the United States, for example, minus the inflation rate in India, that is what will give you the dollar GDP growth rate. Historically, even in the last 40 years, India's dollar GDP growth has averaged about 8.7%. And therefore, and that is, even in this period, we have gone through a lot of global challenges, global crisis, etc. So a 7% real GDP growth is compatible with the 8+% dollar GDP growth, which is what will take us there. And more importantly, as time goes by, what constitutes Viksit Bharat is not a number in terms of per capita income or absolute GDP size. It's about whether the current generation feels that it is doing better than the previous generation, and whether they are very confident that their future generation will do better than them. That is a sign of development.
270.